it's Dominic here. I'm going to be sewing the Clue 1 for the P&Q Tree of Life. I will be doing the Hope colorway.
The big reveal's coming.
The big reveal's coming.
The big reveal's coming. The big reveal is coming.
There's a big reveal coming?
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, YouTube. Good morning, Instagram. It is 9:30 Cotton Cuts time. Thank you so much for joining us as you do every week. We have a lot of exciting things to talk about today. I am seeing that Dominic sewing video, guys. That's coming. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to see that come together. He had a lot of fun sewing it and putting it together for everybody. And I can't wait for him to share that with everybody. So we are going to start, as we do every show, with questions submitted by you. In order to submit a question for our next show, simply go to cottoncuts.com/live. These come to you. They're handed to me right before we get here, so I haven't seen them. I don't have my trusty MC with me today, but I think we can probably wing it through these questions. All right, so let's go. Dorothy Dixon from Denver, Colorado. Thanks, Dorothy. I hope it's not too cold and snowy where you are and you're getting a little bit of spring. Dorothy's question: while I am sewing, my bobbin thread keeps breaking. Ugh, it's so frustrating. Is there anything I can do to prevent this? Okay, Dorothy, we're going to talk a lot more about sewing machines here in a minute. But if your bobbin thread keeps breaking, there's a couple different things you can do to kind of triage the problem. So A, rethread your machine completely. Top thread, bottom thread, rethread all of it. Second, check to make sure when you're putting your bobbin in, you're putting it in the correct way for your machine. We'll talk about that in a little bit here in a second. I would change your needle. And then as a last case resort, I would change your thread. All of these things should help you get to a happy place for your machine. Not every thread likes every machine, unfortunately. I wish that were true. But I think if you try all of those things, changing your top thread, changing your bottom thread, changing your needle, rethreading the whole machine, that can help. Otherwise, what I would suggest, Jana put it out here as well, your bobbin might be a problem. So like every now and then, the needle gets misaligned or the bobbin isn't seated correctly in the spool in the bottom case. And sometimes it gets a nick and it doesn't spin correctly. We'll talk a little how the bobbin interacts with the needle so you can help know a little bit more about that as well. But Jana's absolutely right. So all these things, just debug. If it's still not working, I would suggest taking it to a repair shop. And so there's a lot of sewing machine repair shops. They're all still attached to like the vacuum cleaner. I don't know why this is still a thing, but vacuum cleaner repairs are often the same as your sewing machine repair. And just have someone help and see if they can perhaps help walk you through what the problem might be. Unfortunately, Dorothy, this is kind of a common problem. And so if anyone has any suggestions for what Dorothy should try, put it in the comments wherever you're watching us. Thanks so much for the question, Dorothy. Next question, Amy McFroth from Toronto, Canada. Wow, hello from Canada, our northern neighbor. How is technology changing the quilting process? All right, Amy, how much time do we have for this question? Okay, so technology is everywhere and changing literally every part of the quilting process. So we can start at the beginning. Fabric used to be screen printed. It used to have to go through heavy presses. It used to have large batches. There used to be setups. There used to be a long process to print fabric. Now, most fabrics are digitally printed on high capacity machines in Southeast Asia. And so batches can get smaller, batches can be more customized. Good morning, so Terry, thanks so much for joining us. We can make smaller batches of fabric. So it doesn't necessarily have to be as antiquated as it was where there was all this setup and we had to make big batches of fabric. We can actually make smaller batches of customized fabric. And that's where companies like Spoonflower and Paintbrush Studios are really doing a great job at making smaller batch digitally printed fabrics that meet people's needs. And so it's no longer, I have to order fabric now and wait 9 months for it. And I need to make sure that the batch is big enough. They can definitely do smaller batches. Technology is also changing the quilting process in general. I mean, when we think back to Singer sewing machines in the 1950s, they had one stitch, people. I don't know about you, my machine has 180 stitches, right? And so that is something I can do. I don't need an industrial machine. It doesn't need to be a big piece of equipment. I can do that on my home machine and the machine I use every day, with common thread that I can get at my local quilt shop. Technology is even changing the design process. I mean, when we look at quilts that are, 50, 100 years, 150 years ago, it was very simple, straight piecing. It was made with whatever we had access to. Now we have software that literally anyone can use to design your own quilt. And it's click and drag. The access to computers and all the technology to design your own quilt has changed so significantly. It doesn't require an advanced degree to be a quilt designer. Lots of people can be quilt designers. And we're seeing the benefit of that all over social media. Is this, the creativity has been able to expand in the design process for the quilts. And then lastly, there's this great unknown of what artificial intelligence is going to do for quilting. And so one of our friends of Cotton Cuts, Mac Barnes, he is an incredibly talented college student at WashU, and he's studying textile arts and software design, software engineering. And he's looking at how AI can help with the design process for quilts to really break down a lot of these traditional barriers that we thought existed. And so I think technology has changed a lot in the past 50 years for quilting, and I think it's going to continue to change. And we're going to see a lot more customized, personalized, individualized. We're going to see a lot more breaking down traditional barriers that we thought existed. I think it's going to be a very different art form in 50 years than where it is today. Amy, that was a fantastic question. Thank you. Technology is constantly changing. At the same time, though, the process is still the same. A sewing machine is still a sewing machine. It still has a basic mechanism that still connects two pieces of fabric together. And so while technology has changed certain elements of quilting, there's still some things, some basic principles that still hold true with everything. Oh, and I didn't even get into long arm quilting and all that process and how different that is and how much that's come along in 25 years. Okay. All right. Thanks so much for the question, Amy. I appreciate it. If you have a question, go to cottoncuts.com/live. We'll definitely crowdsource some of the answers to these questions because I can see we're getting a little past kind of my expertise, but thank you guys so much for submitting all these questions. All right. So let's see. So Terry says that a vintage machine user and restorer. So true. It sews what you need it to sew, right? I mean, we can look at a featherweight from the 50s compared to a sewing machine today, right? They still sew. The mechanism for the needle into the bobbin, into the thread is all still the same. It's just expanded the capability and capacity. And I love vintage sewing machines, so Terry. So that is a fantastic. It's one of those, like, I think if you look, if you're on YouTube and on Facebook, you can see, like, that's my featherweight. I'm pretty sure I'm pointing in the wrong direction. That's my featherweight that we have here on the set. So I love it. Okay, so what's happening in the shop this week? So we shipped all those snippets. Last week, Dominic and I talked about our snippets, all of our die cut scraps that we ship everywhere. And so we had what we call our scrap dash here in the shop. And so you're going to start to see some videos of this. We basically take all the scraps, we dump them on a table, and we just package them as fast as we can. And because we like to have fun and make things a competition, we see who can pack the most at the right, correct weight in a certain period of time. And it's fun. And we create a lot of dust, so everyone's wearing masks because fabric is a very linty product. And we pack as many snippets as we possibly can. And so we shipped all those to our snippet memberships. Also, everyone who purchased a snippet after our show last week, thank you so much. Those were shipped out to you as well. Be on the lookout for our Earth Day challenge. We're going to be coming up with a snippet challenge for the month of April. You are not going to want to miss that at all. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm trying to catch up on our notes. Okay, so we are getting into the final call for Tree of Life, folks. That's our puzzle mystery quilt. Signups for that will end next Friday. And so for everyone watching the show today, we're going to do something kind of fun. So if you head to the website and sign up for a new Tree of Life membership, we are going to send you a coordinated bag of snippet scraps to your colorway. You're going to go to cottoncuts.com, get started, sign up for a new Tree of Life, and we will send you a bag. So for example, Enchanted is one of our colorways. It is still available on the website. You will receive this bag of coordinated scraps free. we're just doing something fun as we come up to the finish line. Tree of Life has been so much fun. It has been so exciting, but it is time to move it into the vault as we prepare for our next mystery. So today only, we will add this to your clue 1 and 2 to get you all caught up. Clue 3 will ship to next week. Sorry, confusing everything together. Let's see here. We also have Carnival whole quilts. Definitely mark your calendar for the big reveal for Carnival. It is coming up. We have guests like we always do. We're going to have people popping in and showing all their Carnival puzzle mystery quilt craziness. It is going to be a lot of fun. So definitely mark your calendars for April 26th. All right. So on our show last week, I was talking with Dominic, and one of the questions that we got asked was, what would you recommend for a new quilter? And without hesitation, one of the very first things I said was to take a sewing machine class. And I got a lot of comments back on this. People were like, well, what do you mean take a sewing machine class? I've been sewing for 20 years. I've been sewing for 30 years. I already know everything about my sewing machine. Why would I take a sewing machine class? And so I thought it would be fantastic to kind of share my story with the class, some of the things I've learned and why it might be a good time for a refresher. So I started sewing when I was 8 years old. I learned on the sewing machine that my mom had. I learned the basic straight stitch. I started making some clothes. I made my first quilt when I was 13. And when I got married, one of our wedding gifts was a white sewing machine. The brand name was White. And it was like $99. It was what we could afford. And I sewed a couple projects early on when I was married. And so I knew how to use a sewing machine. I took home ec. Like I could thread a machine, I could change the bobbin. I knew all the basic elements of a sewing machine. But it wasn't until I had Lincoln that I was gifted an opportunity to get kind of a really nice sewing machine. And so I went to my local quilt shop. I had a gift card and I bought this sewing machine. And they said, well, with the sewing machine, you'll be able to take a sewing basics class. It'll be every Monday for a month for 2 hours. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't think I need to do this, guys. Like, I know how to use a sewing machine. I'm good with it. Like, I don't think I need to take this class. And every Monday, I would drag my little sewing machine and I would go to my class and I'd be like, this is going to be lame. And every Monday night, I would come and be like, I learned so much. Sewing machines, like we started, are so different, right? It's not just a straight stitch anymore. And so it's you definitely can benefit from taking one of these classes. And I went in and I can't even begin to tell you how much I learned. And when I think about a sewing machine itself, like there's the spectrum of types of sewing machine are so big. And I was thinking about it this morning. Sewing machines are kind of like hammers, right? Hammers have one job. They hit a nail or they pull a nail out of a wall. Sewing machine has one job: connect pieces of fabric together or take them apart. And so you can get the sewing machine that's like cute little one that's potable and you can take it around with you, just like you have the hammer that does the little jobs. You're not going to want that sewing machine when you're quilting a full-size quilt. You can get the general use hammer that's super industrial and it hits every single hammer that you want. It takes every single thing out. It's heavy. You can loan it to friends. It's going to be awesome. It'll be durable. It'll be great. It does everything you want to do and then things you didn't know you needed done. You can get the sledgehammer of sewing machines. You can get the big one, the hefty one, but you don't want that when you're putting nails in the wall to hang up pictures, right? So you get the sledgehammer sewing machines. And then we can always get the sewing machine that's, plated in gold and has jewels all over it and you like looking at and never use, right? So I think sewing machines are along that continuum. And so the one that I got when Lincoln was born was the industrial one, the heavy duty one, the general purpose one, the one that you can use for so many different things. And when I went to this class, every day I learned something new. And so even something as simple as the different presser feet that go on a sewing machine. I know, the basic one you're going to use for a zigzag and the basic one you're going to use for piecing. But to learn what a ruffler foot was, if you guys don't know what a ruffler foot is, go to YouTube now, search for a video on the ruffler foot. This machine, it's like crazy. I was gifted one for my featherweight. It is crazy how the mechanism works, but if I was just looking around, I would never know how to use it. And I actually got to test it in the class to see how it works. I also there learned about how to make piping using a sewing machine. This is something I'm sure I could have looked up on YouTube, but I never would have known how to do it had I not taken the class. I also learned what a Teflon foot is. And when in my sewing machine, there's all these feet, and there was always the white one. And I was like, I don't really know what this white foot is. It looks a little different. Maybe I'll figure out how to use it later. It's actually made of Teflon. So when you're sewing vinyl, it doesn't stick to your foot as you're feeding it through the machine. And so when a couple years later, I wanted to make a by Annie pattern using vinyl, I knew exactly which foot to use. I didn't have to fight with the vinyl. I didn't get stuck in my machine. I had the knowledge based from the class to be able to know which foot to use. And buttons, when I was sewing 30, 40 years ago, are so different now that using that button foot as a presser foot on the sewing machine, it's a game changer. You put the little button in the back and it automatically makes the button hole and you cut it. But these are all things that I just didn't know. And we get so used to being in a rut, like I know how to piece, I know how to straight stitch, that we might not experiment or try just because we've never done it. In the class, I learned all of those things. I also learned what a sewing machine needle is. And so I've spent 15, 20 years designing medical devices using hypodermic needles, using bone marrow extraction needles. I know a lot about needles, but let me tell you guys, the coolest engineering feat for needles is a sewing machine needle. So when I saw a hyper view of what a needle looks like, my mind was completely blown. I thought it was a solid piece of metal with a hole through it for the thread and a tip that would cut through it's actually hollow, and it has a little notch in the back of the needle right above where your thread goes. And the way the sewing machine actually works is the needle comes down and your bobbin case goes through the little notch in the back, and that's what keeps the thread in the bobbin as the needle comes up. That's what actually connects the two pieces of fabric together, is this super hyper engineered little notch in the back of your needle. And so as it goes down, every time it catches it. And so that's the mechanism of the sewing machine, which is actually very cool that it happens as fast as it does when you think about it, which is why problems like what Dorothy was describing happen so frequently, because it has to be so accurate. Your needle can't be bent and out of alignment. Your bobbin case has to catch it every time. And so all of that has to work together, which is why in the class I learned if anything is out of alignment, if you're having problems with your bobbin, take all your thread out, rethread it. Change your needle as well. Change all of the things and see if you can reconnect those pieces so they come together correctly and everything sews perfectly. Also, with respect to the needle, I've done work on sharpness to make sure it doesn't hurt for hypodermic purposes. But for your needle, I was told general guidance is to change it about every 4 to 6 hours because it will get dull. 4 to 6 hours is hard for me to measure, guys. I don't know about you. I don't set a timer when I sit down and sew and set it attached to my needle. I was also told change it every project. That's kind of hard for someone like me that works on multiple projects at the same time. And so what I've learned is I can hear my needle when it needs to be changed because it starts making sounds. When it actually punctures through the thread, you can hear it. And so that is a strong indicator that you need to change the needle, because what'll happen is as it gets duller over time, it won't make as clean cuts through your fabric. And it's actually going to start pushing fabric down into the bobbin, and it will actually start moving slower. Your stitch length will get off because it won't make it as cleanly back up and down as it should. And so changing your needle is a game changer. Yeah, I quilted by Sue. Yeah, that's what I do too. You can hear it. As you get more used to it, you can hear when your needle needs to be changed. And so I bought a ton of needles on a drop site once. And so I just change them pretty frequently. In the class, I also learned, and this is kind of a fun little tip, the one thing that you only hear when you get with people talking about sewing machines was when you take that needle, what do you do with it, right? And so we talk about getting a pill bottle, which many of us have empty pill bottles around the house. You take a nail and you poke a little hole in the top of it, and then you just drop your needle right in, and then it's in a sharps proof container. And you just keep that by your sewing machine. And every time you change the needle, you just drop the old needle in the little case, and then it's safe and no one gets stuck. It doesn't get stuck in your foot when you get up and walk away. I keep mine there. I actually put my little my dull rotary blades in it as well. Those fit into there, so that way I have a full sharps container. I don't have to worry about the kids getting into it because the pill bottle is child safe. It works really, really, really well. And so also in this class, it's all the little tips and tricks. Like this class for me was 15 years ago. Everything I'm sharing with you today, I learned in the class and it stuck with me. One of the most important things that I've learned is that thread goes one way through your machine. It's one of these things when I would have to change a bobbin. I have a sewing machine here, which is kind of why I keep looking at it. Like I would just grab the top thread and pull it back through and then use that to thread a bobbin. And that, guys, is a really big kind of no-no. The plates inside your machine that hold the tension, that hold the presser to make sure that all of your thread moves through at the right rate, are only meant to go one way. Now, if you want to reverse it and go backwards, once or twice, it's not going to kill your machine, but it's actually strongly recommended that you only pull your thread ever one way through. So if you have to refill a bobbin, snip the thread right by your thread, pull it out by the needle, and then rethread it through the top of your machine for a bobbin. This is something I've never known. I never would have thought that, but hearing a sewing machine expert, and I know, so Terry, you're super passionate about this as a vintage machine user and restorer. Like all these things are second nature to you, but to someone who just picked up a sewing machine and learned in home ec or learned from your mom, this is something that you just don't know. Also, another tip and trick, like your sewing machine is supposed to be serviced once a year. This is one of these things that can be really hard to remember because you're always working on a project, and I have to have this by this date, and I have to have this by this date. And so I like to think about it like an appliance in my house, right? You can take the dishwasher and you can choose not to service it and run it until it breaks. And then that cost is going to be much higher than if you'd have done the annual service on that dishwasher. Same with your car, right? You can choose to skip the oil change. It's eventually going to catch up to you. And so for me, my tip and trick to make sure that I service my sewing machine regularly is I take it in every January. That's usually past the heavy sewing. That's usually past the Christmas sewing. My machine is probably still smoking from all the Christmas gifts I've put through it. And January is a good time to take it for me because it's kind of the dead of the winter. I can take it. It can take sometimes up to 2 to 3 weeks to get your sewing machine serviced. Yeah, Quilting by Sue. Yes, once a year. It's actually what's recommended to keep it just clean, oiled, and moving smoothly. That's something, depending, obviously, if you're using it once a year, you don't need to service it once a year. But if you're an average quilter, you should be servicing your machine just to make sure all the parts and pieces are moving smoothly. I know it can feel traumatic to give your sewing machine to someone for 2 weeks, especially if you're a heavy sewer, but it is worth it in the end. It is going to make sure that all your machine is moving smoothly, especially with all the electronics that are in the machines these days. You want to make sure that software is updated. You want to make sure everything is fresh and that you don't get stuck, because there's nothing worse than being in the middle of a time-sensitive project and having to take your sewing machine in and have it gone for more than a couple weeks. That is traumatic. And then you're scrambling and you're trying to get this project done. Do your future self a favor and get it serviced once a year. Let's see here. So Terry's talking about the intricacy of the needle. Yeah, it's crazy, this notch and how it works and how it comes in and out of the machine. Yeah, Judy Neatland says she just recently found out about pulling the thread through the machine. Yeah, those plates, they're meant to go this way. And if you pull them out the wrong way, you're going to eventually start to collect excess dust and lint, and it's actually going to cause longer term damage. Once or twice, you'll probably be okay. Don't do it more than that. All right. Good morning, Kim Martin. Lovely to see you this morning. Okay, let me see. So there's so much about the sewing machine, guys. And I know that this concept of like going into a quilt shop, weekly for 2 to 3 hours can be a little daunting. That was 15 years ago. Thankfully, YouTube exists. All of these videos on how to use a sewing machine can be found on YouTube. And so it is definitely worth the time. Even something as simple as like on my sewing machine, I said I have 180 stitches. I use maybe 3. But in the class, I learned the difference between some of the zigzag stitches. Like there is a different zigzag stitch for stretch materials than for quilting cotton. And it turns out for years I've been using the wrong zigzag stitch, but I needed to go to the class to learn that. I also learned what a blind hem stitch is, which for quilters is weird because that's apparel, that's not a quilting stitch. So now anytime any of our dress pants pop a hem, I can pop it in the sewing machine. It is a very cool little stitch. I look at it at my machine and I never would have consciously picked it out. But now that I know how to use it because of the class, I save ourselves tons of money in tailoring fees. So what I would love to do is we are going to give away a $25 gift card to our Cotton Cuts Notion shop. So you can accessorize and bling out your sewing machine with notions. Go ahead and leave us a comment as to what your sewing machine tip and trick is. What is something that you learned? Oh, what machine do you have? I will answer that question, Sue, in just a second. So leave us a comment wherever you find this video of what is your favorite sewing hack, tip, trick, something you didn't know, but when you learned it, it completely changed the way you interacted with your sewing machine. All right, on Instagram, Quilted by Sue is asking what machine do I have. So I have a Baby Lock Melody. I love Baby Lock machines. Baby Lock machines are actually made here in St. Louis. This is their headquarters. And the Melody, I think they stopped making it 5 or 10 years ago. I love this machine. I've had it for 15 years. It gets everything done that I need to get done. I remember when I got it, some of the game changers were the automatic threading. Like that is something I didn't know you could do. So this like licking the thread and threading it through a needle, like I haven't done that in years. It's an automatic threader. I love that it has the automatic cutter on the side as well. So in the video with Dominic, you saw him kind of use the side of the machine to cut between pieces. Having that there is so, I haven't used snips near the sewing machine in years as well. And then the other piece as well, there's a couple other features that I like about it. Oh, I haven't used a foot pedal on a sewing machine in a long time because I use the start stop button and the adjustable speed on the machine. And so when Dominic came to sew at the sewing machine, everyone's like, well, where's the foot pedal? He's like, what are you talking about? We don't use foot pedals anymore. And so all of those things came with my sewing machine. And I find those more valuable than the 180 stitches. I feel like 180 stitches is great. And I might use 40 of them over the life of the machine. But, you know, every day I use the automatic threader. I use the cutter. I use the push button to start and stop. I know there's people that are super savvy enough to use kind of the knee stop and start on their sewing machines. That requires a level of coordination that exceeds my skill. But for those of you that use the knee press and start, fantastic. Like that is another game changer. No more using a foot pedal and having to adjust your speed and control it that way. All right. So I'm seeing lots of fantastic tips and tricks coming in. You guys, like this is all great. Please keep these coming. We'll pick one person. It'll get a $25 gift card. We have a whole bunch of notions on our shop. If you go to cottoncuts.com, shop in our extra section, we've got a tool of pink, we've got some ribbon, we've got a whole bunch of basic tips and tricks and notions. I'm looking at my reminders. Don't forget our Cotton Cuts Cares organization this month is Reading is Fundamental. For every new classic, Modern Maker, and Java membership signed up this month, we will donate $5 of that to Reading is Fundamental. It's a great way for us to give back. You can help us, help them, plus you get to experience all these fantastic memberships that we have at Cotton Cuts. We already talked about the giveaway. Don't forget to join us next week. Next week, we will probably be talking about our new Spirit drop. So Spirit is our 2-color quilt. We have a new design coming out on Monday. It was at the beginning of this video. I would go back and watch it. I like this one. This is a 2-star quilt design. The block is bigger, so it's not a small block like the first one. So the block itself finishes 18 inches square. So it goes together very, very, very quickly, which is fantastic because at this time of year, everyone is looking for graduation gifts. For everyone that graduates college, grad school, high school, kindergarten graduations are becoming a thing these days. And so grab those pre-cut 2-color quilts and send your graduate off with a quilt that's specifically designed for them. Let's see, I'm trying to read all the comments. So yeah, a Baby Lock Brilliant machine, got it last summer. I don't know how my machine had a push button to start and stop. Yes, Viking, right? So it's one of these, everyone kind of is brand loyal, but again, it's like that hammer, right? Every single sewing machine does the same thing. It's just, does it need to be big? Does it need to be small? Does it need to be durable? And what are you using that hammer for? So, all right, I think that's it for me today, guys. So go ahead and join us next week at 9:30, and we will have more and fun, exciting things to talk about. Wait, Paula, I did talk about this. You want me to talk about it again? Okay, I'm reminding everybody. So Paula, right? So we love Paula on this show. She's the person that runs behind and makes sure and keeps me on track. She wants me to remind everyone, all new Tree of Life signups today will get a free snippet bag coordinated to your colorway. And so make sure you get in. If you've been dawdling, if you're on the fence about that colorway, it is about to go into the vault. So definitely get in there and get yours ordered today. Jana Paula says hi to you. So, okay. Oh, so Terry, don't worry. You did not miss the deadline for sew a dress at all. That deadline is going to be Monday. So make sure you get all those dresses uploaded, and we will talk more about all of the dresses that were made next week. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon. Bye now.